Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Today, we're going to talk about some life coaching because here's the thing. A lot of people do a lot of things, but the problem is we don't do it in alignment. And when we're not in alignment, it is easy to lose not just weeks, months, but years, or some people decades off of their life. Having personally experienced this, I will vouch for the importance of alignment. Our guest today has had a ton of experience in the network marketing space as well as coaching space. They've spoken internationally with companies you've heard of like Amway, and have had a ton of success with it. He's helped people get out of debt. He's helped people get their businesses back on track. He's helped people get aligned and get the fulfillment out of what they were seeking. And so I'm happy to have today Anthony Spark to talk through life. So how are you today, Anthony?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me, Frank. Such a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So when people hear life and business coach, right, there's a lot of coaching. It's a big industry. But one of the struggles a lot of people have is figuring out is this a good coach? Is it a bad coach?
Yeah.
Do you do it? Is it a scam? Whatever. And unfortunately, now this idea of life and business coach has gotten to a place where it can mean a lot of things to a lot of
Okay.
people. How do you clarify what it is you do to people to solve their issues at their deepest level so that they
Yeah.
get it right out of the gate?
Yeah. Well, to talk about the industry, I think that's a good starting point. So, when you're inundated with ads and you have all these different people, I can help you this, I can help you that, this course, this mastermind, this coaching session, this video course, you have school programs, you have all these different things. It is important to have some true north on who you're going to work with, what you're looking for. I think that typically we over index a small percentage. So I don't think most things are scams. I think there's a small percentage, but it gets a ton of coverage. So when we talk about a good coach or a bad coach, I think that there's really two primary things to look for. And then I'll talk about how you solve those levels and find the right people. But first, is the obvious one that most people don't miss is, has this person created success for themselves in the vertical they're teaching? So I can't teach someone to play the oboe. I can't teach someone to be a professional luger. I've never done those things. Now, the principles for someone that might play the oboe or be a professional luger, those success principles, the human psychology is transcendent of the specific skill. But particularly if you're talking about business coaching, they should have had either ideally successful business experience, or at the very least, they can show you a portfolio of people's businesses they've helped to grow using some of those more general psychological tools. But the second one I find is the thing that most people miss, which is, does this person share my values? Because whenever you're getting coached, you're going to replicate what's in their life. And it doesn't mean that I think it's very important. There isn't a right set of values. There isn't a right syntax of values. And I think this question of a good or a bad coach is much better framed a good coach or a bad coach for me. Because a great coach for one person could be a terrible coach for somebody else. And that value, that those looking at the person's values. So if someone believes in being present as a father or a mother, family values, having good relationships, the quality of their life, that art of fulfillment that Tony Robbins talks about. He recently did that interview with Alex Hormozy talking about the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment that's much more personal. You have to be careful if you're going to talk to someone that's been in 3 marriages and, has a lot of money, but family values are important to you. Doesn't make anybody right. And it doesn't mean that there's shade on anybody. A lot of people get confused. It just means you're going to want to try to find somebody that espouses your values. Now, talking about how do you that kind of cut through the noise, and how do you find somebody, or how do I articulate what it is I do? I think that the primary thing, as you said, is getting into alignment with who you are, what you're passionate about, because I find that to be much more important than just dollar and cents on the other end. It's just when we don't have the dollars and cents, when we're in a job that we don't like, or a business that's no longer fulfilling, it becomes really, really important that we figure out the money problem. But oftentimes it can be a trap, because if you just fix the money problem and you're not in alignment with who you are, you're not doing things you want to do, very often you end up with a very Pyrrhic victory. You end up with a firm grasp on the money, and you can lose a lot of the other things that are more important: personal integrity, passion for your life, really feeling that you're doing the thing that you're meant to be doing. So largely what I look to do as I work with people is really to help them clarify an operating manual for themselves. What is their value system? What is their syntax of values? Very often in America with the political spectrum and how divided it is, very often people negate the fact that almost every American has the same values. They're just in a different order. They're in a different syntax. And if family's first and success is second, or financial success is first and family is second, it's the same values, but your life is going to look very, very different based on that syntax of values. So we have the tangible. If I'm doing business coaching and we're looking to make money, we're looking to work in personal finance, understanding the mentality, that's more of a science. It's getting habits, it's getting systems, it's getting understanding implemented. But when you start talking about that element of that art of fulfillment, it's really important we get clear on what we want, where we want to go, what we want our life to look like, at least the best we can from our vantage point, because you can always redirect, but not having a direction almost always guarantees you getting a location that you didn't really want to get to.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a great explanation. I really appreciate that. And just there's a lot there. So I want to go back to a point,
Yeah.
a couple of points that are very, because you hear them constantly.
Hmm.
One is, I love how you talked about most people have similar values, if not the same, but the order's a little different.
Right.
I think about, and this is not a political podcast, but since you brought it up, I love how when you talk about, you know, they'll take these like voting polls that say, here's a list of issues, and they give percentages to, well, this is this important, and then a month from now that order changes, which is
Yeah.
very similar to what you were talking about, right? It's like it always seems to be more or less the same issues, just the
Right.
orders are shifting. And as individuals, we're the same. So if we can just recognize that walking into any conversation, it's huge. But you mentioned something I agree with wholeheartedly, and that's not every coach is good for
Right.
everybody. I met a lady recently. She was upset because she paid a mentor $500 to teach her something. He didn't completely teach it to her per se, but did she get 500? And so when I spoke with her, I was like, well, you
Right.
know what? He disappointed that he didn't teach you what you paid him to learn. But what he did do, and maybe unknowingly, was did he give her $500 worth of value? I said, ma'am,
Right.
he didn't just give you 500, he actually gave you $5,000 worth of
Right.
value, if not more. It just didn't line up the way you were thinking. And so she felt better because she really did learn some valuable things. My question to you is, how does somebody, especially an inexperienced person seeking help in an area, which is going to be the vast majority of people, whatever it
Right.
is, might be business, might be fitness, could be personal, whatever, how do they figure out who is the right person? Because that is where I find most people go astray. They'll
Yeah.
pay for programs like, oh, I didn't get anything. I'm like, that's a great program. Why didn't you get
Right.
anything?
Right. Well, I think there's a few issues at play. First off, it's you do need to acknowledge that if you're going to go down a path, you hitting a home run the first time isn't as likely, right? So a lot of times I see people, they start in a personal education or coaching direction, which I think has only upside. But the first program you do or the first person you pick, it might not have been optimal. I think a really great mindset, like you said, is looking at the value versus what you got. But a lot of times people, they do it, they spend the money, and then they swear it off. And that becomes a real problem. And it's so unfortunate, particularly when there is malfeasance going on and people are not properly handling things and they do get burned because maybe it is someone that didn't represent themselves properly. But just because you made an error in the first choice doesn't mean that the path was wrong. So I think that's an important thing we acknowledge. I mean, if you're going to be an investor, do a bunch of investing, you're going to lose money sometimes, but the only way you're going to be able to ever learn how to win is you're going to have some losses. The way I think it's important to look at both coaching and investments is very often people are only considering the upside, but they don't consider the most important equation, which is, are you okay with the worst case scenario? And if you're okay and you mitigate your risk by looking at, if I invest this money and time, whether it be a coach or an investment, am I okay with the worst case? Because if you are, it's always a win. But if you're only expecting home runs and you never consider what the downside can be, you're very often going to be disillusioned. So that's the first part. Second, from both the coach's perspective and someone finding the right person, one of the things I teach my teams is that you can't manage unclear expectations. Very often we make these assumptions that people are thinking and feeling and communicating and hearing the same things that we're feeling or thinking and expecting. And you just cannot expect someone to do the things that you expect unless it's clearly articulated. Now, I would venture to say that that coach could work on maybe setting proper expectations. So what they're providing is clearer. But on the client's end of things, someone looking to engage with somebody, you need to be extremely clear and make sure you get very clear on what are my expectations, what is my best case scenario, what am I looking to acquire and accomplish here. And you can't avoid someone lying or misrepresenting. But I find that most people, they typically think things are scams or lying or people being dishonest. It's very often just a miscommunication. One person thought they wanted one thing, the other person thought they wanted the other thing. So, from an outside pessimistic view, it's very easy to say, well, they just convinced me, but it might just not have been everybody being on the same page. I think it's a much more generous interpretation of it. So, I think that if I was engaging and teaching someone to engage, that would be the first things. And then lastly, it is really good if you don't like somebody and you know that, because that helps you to close doors that need to be closed. The challenge with trying to have everybody like you is if you're ever liked by most or all people, no one knows you because you're not being honest about who you are. You're not being honest about what you represent. A lot of people love my coaching. A lot of people hate my coaching. A lot of my peers I'm really, really close with. A lot of my peers hate the way that I do things. In my opinion, it's a tougher path to walk, but that path of personal integrity is very, very important, both for marketability, but more importantly for your personal psychological health. Because if you're going to operate in a way that's disingenuous to who you are and your values, the psychological toll that you take from that over long periods of time, which you alluded to, over going in a path that maybe is just money or cultural expectations or familial expectations of becoming a doctor because your dad was a doctor you never wanted to be, there's some real psychological tolls that we take that's never worth the money, in my opinion.
It's almost like if you have haters, that's good. That means we know you
Yes.
stand for something.
Right. Right. And no one likes to have haters, and no one likes to. Anyone's like, I love when people. No, you could learn just like you like to. You learn to work out and being sore. You learn the pain of starting a company and the failures. You could learn to have an acquired taste, but no one wants people throwing shade and talking shit online about them. It's just unfortunately, it's priced to entry if you're going to be honest.
Yeah. Well, no, if you're honest, someone's not going to like you.
Yes.
That's just as long as humans exist, that truth, that will always be true. But
Yeah.
let's go back to expectations for a second. One thing I have found, because I coach some people, and I've worked with coaches as well, and what I find with is this thing, expectations. It's almost like a dangerous word, but it shouldn't be.
Mm,
But what I have found is, especially when you're working with someone getting into coaching, it's almost like when you set clear expectations. And the way I think of clear expectations is I'm reading a book from one of my coaches. It's called Business is War, Millionaire versus Billionaire. And there's a billionaire that says, hey, is it at a 12-year-old level?
mm,
And so, not because that's insulting, but because it just works,
sure.
right? The simplicity in it works. And I was like, well, he's a billionaire. We could probably listen to that. But what I found long before I read this book was when you set clear expectations, I need you to do A, B, C in X amount of time, whatever it is. A lot of people struggle
Yeah,
with very simple expectations.
it's true.
How do you help people get past that? It's an incredibly common problem.
Yeah. So
I,
it's you can support, you can help people edit how they see themselves because largely it becomes an identity problem. But the unfortunate truth that's very unpopular is that it's an inside job. You know, a lot of people, they take this locus of responsibility that needs to be within them and they put it on someone else. They put it on the government, they put it on the president, they put it on their parents, they put it on their situation. They can put it on any type of stereotypes or any type of things that are going against them. And it doesn't mean these things aren't true. A lot of times it becomes a touchy subject. To say that some people aren't racist or some people aren't chauvinistic or that the economy doesn't affect us, that's reductive. That's not true. The challenge is when you take the locus of responsibility and then now you put it in your coach or you put it in your boss or you put it in anybody else, you're now a victim no matter what way you play it because you don't have that locus of responsibility internally. So making someone be accountable, we can help people have systems. We can help them look at themselves differently. We can help them to motivate and have the sticks and carrots or basic human psychology. But there is nothing that anyone can do for someone that if they're not willing to do the work. And a lot of times I think that's part of both a sales pitch problem of coaching as well as the expectations of clients. No one can fix anyone's life but themselves. You can have support, you can have strategy, you can have direction. But that's why if you look at high level coaches, they have a really thorough intake process because they're not looking to have negative reviews by people that no matter what you gave them and what you did, they weren't willing or ready to make any changes. It becomes a coach should be 5% or less of the equation, and it should be understood that the person is 95, 99% of it because you're the one doing the work. So when someone can't follow through on basic accountability things, I have a strong rule, both in my network marketing company, coaching clients, anything. Accountability for me is the number one character trait I look to work with, whether it be a client, a business partner, or somebody I'm working with. Because if I can't trust that you follow through on your things, no matter how high your talent, how big your ambition, it never works out in the long term. It's the secret to success. Follow through. It's most of it. People think it's charisma, they think it's intelligence, they think it's work ethic. It's follow through on doing basic things is very often that difference between success and failure.
You gave me an idea in there. I was like, all right, I'll write something down.
I love it. I'm so glad. Hopefully lots of people are getting ideas and this time is beneficial for them in their life.
There was a marketing idea that was just born in there. So
I
thank
love
you.
it. I hope it makes you millions, Frankie.
Well, maybe it will. Well, I'll keep you posted on that. But it, you reminded me of a quote I heard from Michael Jordan. Like we all know Michael Jordan, the GOAT. Some people say LeBron. We're not going to get into that.
We
But
can if you want to. I got some thoughts.
well, I have some. We all do, I'm sure. But he said something that I never forgot, and it's something one of my coaches has echoed to me is he always expected more of himself than anyone could possibly expect of him.
Hmm.
And he lived it, he showed it, the results spoke for themselves. How do first of all, is it even possible to instill that or teach that? And if so, what would that look like? Because just if we could instill that in people or get people to execute that belief, that way of thinking in themselves, so many things would get solved. But by
Yeah.
the same token, it's not easy.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
It's a good question. I have some general overarching beliefs that may or may not be true. So I think we can edit behavior. I think we can hedge against weakness, but I think character is inherent. So I believe that we all have certain strengths. We all have certain weaknesses of character. And very often when people look at things, they try to cut the thorns off the rose when the thorns are inherent in the rose. So when we look at this undeniable drive, very often people disregard what very often becomes relational and life annihilation. That's the negative end of that unbelievable, insatiable, tremendous drive. So instilling that into somebody, I feel like starts from a premise of the person is broken. And I just don't find that to be an effective way to create change and simultaneously honor the person. You can create change, but I feel that the collateral damage when people come from a place of I'm broken, I need to be fixed, is inherently not the best way for them to effectively grow. Because you can use that fuel, but it's like this, it's like the dark force, it's like a dark force, like the dark side, and it burns you out, it hollows you out. So I think a better way to look at it is when I'm coaching, in particular, when we talk about identity and from a psychological position here, we look at who am I, not good or bad, true or false. Who am I? Sometimes you're driven. Sometimes you have high personal standards. Sometimes you have lower personal standards and you're not as driven. But we can't disregard the bad parts of ourself and shove it into our psychological unconsciousness, the shadow, as Carl Jung says, and not expect it to cause other long-reaching effects. So I think the first thing that we do is, rather than say, this person doesn't have that tremendous, we say, okay, that isn't inherent. So how do we move? Because that person typically enjoys life more too. I would venture to say that almost everybody has enjoyed their life more than someone that has that kind of drive that we just talked about inherently at a baseline. The person that has that drive, they need to learn how to enjoy their life. The person who enjoys their life needs to maybe learn how to be more aggressive and have more drive. But if we start from who am I? What are my strengths and weaknesses actually? Not sugar coated, not the facade we present, not the personality we've developed to deal with traumas in life and how we think the world wants us and what's gotten us financial recognition or familial support and safety in our community. Who actually am I? And then we can start to identify it, because if we work from truth, as long as we deny the truth of the situation, people fail because they believe things are true that are actually false. And they usually believe things that are false that are actually true. And the longer and deeper or more greater of a percentage that we're operating out of reality, the worse the feedback's going to be. Because if we just think we can fly with 100% certainty, gravity's going to get you if you trial that, because it's not going to be the reality of the situation. So, but helping somebody move forward and helping somebody be more aggressive, I think a lot of times it comes back to a lot of the cliches that people have heard but have never done. And then they think that, oh, I already know that. Knowing something and doing it are very, very different. So having clarity of where you want to go, having a vision, having something that you're passionate about, that you truly believe in, having a well-rooted, deep-rooted self-esteem and identity in who you are, and doing that emotional and psychological work to get there, that will all be very often the foundation of having that natural drive to do something. But having that standard of, I'm going to expect more of myself, I don't know if that's always all good. I think that everything in life has an equal amount of pros and cons. And very often I get accused of mediocrity with this belief system. I'm a high achiever. I have just personally seen what can happen if we let unfettered ambition and the decision be, I will do anything for something, the erosion that can happen in your life. So that's from personal failure.
You know, I heard a statement the other day that got my attention. When I was thinking about this idea of what do we really need?
Mm.
Piggybacking off what you said, what is it you need? Is it this? Is it this? How hard do you go in? The accountability, getting rid of the victimhood, all of those things. And someone's made this statement the other day. I never heard it, and you mentioned cliche phrase. I've heard lots of cliche phrases, and quite frankly, a lot of them are good, but then some of them,
Sure.
But I never heard this one, but I really liked it. Curious to your thought. It said, "You don't need another miracle. You need a trash can."
Mm. Sure.
And I was like, I've never heard it worded like that.
Yeah. Yep.
What are your thoughts on this idea of, oftentimes when we're seeking something, it's not that we need more, it's we just need to do a lot of deleting.
Yeah, it's so true. That comes back to my foundational belief that you're enough, that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're not broken. When you compare yourself to somebody else, you're always going to look at what's lacking. So I think this is the miracle. Here it is. Here we are. We're Zooming across the internet. Thousands, hopefully, maybe tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people hear this. It makes a difference. They're in their car. The technology, the life, the fact that we're here, the fact that we can do this. This is enough of a miracle. We live in one of the wealthiest times and one of the most prosperous times of all, and we may not be personally experiencing that, but it doesn't change the fact that that is true. So very often I think that it comes down, like you said, to where are we spending our time? Budgeting, when I teach personal finance, it's almost all just about tracking. It's about getting clear on where the dollars are going, but most people don't do that with their minutes, which are way more valuable than any amount of dollars. And where am I putting my time? What are the relationships in my life that maybe aren't serving? What are the beliefs that I have about myself that I need to alter? or beliefs about the world, these global beliefs, like Tony Robbins talks about. And very often, it's not that there's anything wrong, and it's not that we need, like you said, another miracle. It's that we very often need to change our orientation and perspective to the miracle that we're already in, and change what we're looking at. Because when you truly are you're rooted and you do the work, the market pays for what the market wants. And if you develop skills, you develop abilities, you develop confidence, the market rewards it. So it's doing that work. But if you get to this point, if you're willing to do those things, it might take years longer than you wanted, the timeline, the expectations, the original path you thought, but the ultimate outcome becomes almost inevitable. And the opportunities come to you, but not if we can't see them because we have that particular activating system that filters out whatever you're not looking for. It finds the things you're looking for. And that's why a lot of times it's that perspective that comes into play, which is easier said than done. There's people out here that have had traumas, they've had issues, they've been financially not given the advantages and the opportunities that they want. They've had terrible tragedies in their life. And I'm not here to say and pretend like I don't understand, because I do, and I get it. But it keeps us stuck unless we work to change it.
So true. So true. And I liked how you talked about not only we can get unstuck, but we're all a living miracle if we stop and think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And if we look at ourselves as a miracle, I mean that's one of those words, if we stop and think about it, it's like an instant shift of where our
Yeah.
mind is at.
Yeah.
From I'm a victim, woe is me, to I'm a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
that's
we almost,
something you can build off of.
yeah. And we have everything that we need. That's why it's important. A lot of times people monetize this separation, right? And you see it in the courses and the coaches, and I get it, it works. But it's not as profitable to tell people that they are everything they need to be. They just need a little bit of a shift very often, as it is to say you're inherently broken and I'm here to be your savior, because it plays into their desire not to do the work and it plays into your pocketbook. But when we look at things, a lot of times people think they need to quit something when you just maybe need to change the orientation, change the perspective. I almost got divorced, and we're not the same people in the same. I did get divorced, but we're not the same people, and our relationship's not the same. And I've been with my wife for 17 years, and there's nothing valuable in my life than my wife and my kids. Forget the companies, the success, the fans. That's nonsense. It's a game. We have everything, as I said before. When we look at it, a lot of people get confused with reality in the game. And this game of chasing money and game of status and the game of more money and more investments and more freedom. And those things are great. I'm not here to pretend like these trophies aren't good, but if we lose the most valuable thing, which is the person you become in playing the game, that's why when we talk about whether it be basketball or any of these different things, I think you can win and you can lose. And I think you can lose and you could actually win depending on the way and why you're playing the game that you're playing. But you got to be careful not to confuse the game with everything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, I literally just heard a story about a gentleman who was very successful. He was described as very happy, joyful, and he took his life. And
Yeah.
it was like, and people were shocked because they're like, wait a minute, he was always like the happiest person in the
Yeah.
room. But inside it, apparently there was some emptiness that was unknown.
Yeah.
And it's sad when you hear those stories.
So sad. And
Yeah.
that tubs into an entire, I mean, there's two ways to go. I mean, you have mental health, which is something I actually started the punk rock run for mental health. It'll be our third year this year, supports local kids for mental health services. I've struggled some with mental health. I've found for myself, I think there's biological components, there's hereditary components, but there's also those factors that accentuate the problem, largely around not being who you are, playing a game, and very often being the happy-go-lucky guy. It gets you a lot of the things you want, and a lot of times we play a charade, and it can very often be something that we get a lot of rewards from but it doesn't, again, that psychological price, if we're not honest with ourselves and other people, ultimately can become a real problem. So it's a very nuanced thing for sure, but it's always such a tragedy. A lot of times people, they're comparing, they're looking at what other people have, and you don't know what the other end of that is very often. You compare just the
Yeah.
up and you don't look at the cost. And I'm not here to say any cost is right or wrong. I'm not here to say becoming a billionaire is immoral, or I'm not here to say that it's terrible to be a teacher, a school teacher, and make less money. I think that's a ridiculous point of view. But it's just, you can't take one element of someone's life and disregard everything else and then wish for just the rose without the thorns. Everything's got pros and cons. Everything's got a cost. There isn't anything that's going to be free. And we need to weigh those for ourselves. That's why being genuine and honest about who you are. Otherwise, you're going to play games you're not meant to play. You're going to win prizes that are meaningless to you. And that's what it really comes down to, I think. It's that working to be as genuine and authentic about what you want, which can change. We change. I'm not saying it has to be static, but being as honest as we can about that so we play the right game.
You can't wish for the rose without the thorns.
Yep.
I love it. That is so true. I think about in my world of real estate, people are, and one of the most important skills I've had to learn is to not be judgmental
Yeah.
because you never really know the story. And I have a belief now that whatever you see is maybe 1% of what's really at.
Right.
And then I've learned as I learned that lesson, I'm like, you know what? That's probably true about most things in life. You
Yeah.
really rarely know, and you think you know a lot because you see the superficial side, but like you said, everything that came before that is vast,
Yes.
and we really know so little. So you mentioned youth a few moments ago, and as I was preparing this, I was learning. It looks like you started questioning this traditional path, so to speak, when you were younger in your teenage years. And
Yeah.
so, what was your thinking back then as to like where you were going in life?
Hmm. Well, I grew up much more similar to you than people that are 5 and 10 years my junior. I'm 37, so I was the last generation to really grow up without social media being a central tenet of things and the amount of information. I graduated high school 2006. Instagram's not invented till 2008. Facebook's out, but it's not the Facebook of today. So going through school, I was, told the same things. You go to school, get an education, you work hard. I came from a really dysfunctional background. My mom, she's done a wonderful job in the circumstances. She's got 3 kids. I'm the eldest of 3. We're all top 1% earners. And we all got great lives and great relationships. So she really did a great job. But I come from a lot of dysfunction. My dad had a lot of personal problems. His mom had him when she was 15, a lot of abuse. My dad had a lot of, got addicted to drugs, went to prison. I was working full time at 15 just because I wanted to buy stuff and my mom needed money. So I worked and I was blessed with an aptitude. I'm great at learning. Now I've worked hard at it. A lot of times people use, like, well, I'm not that smart. Well, whether you have to read the book 3 times to get it or you can read it once, I mean, it's just whatever effort is necessary. But regardless, I was graduating high school and I knew 2 things. I was always a nonconformist. I'm highly driven by freedom and autonomy. But I knew I wanted to have money to have that. I grew up poor. I said, okay, so any career path that wasn't making me a lot of money, I eliminated because I said, I don't want to stay in this place. I've done this. I didn't have money to start a conventional business. There weren't these kinds of opportunities out there that I ever heard of. So that left me the conventional route. And my second thing I knew for sure is I want to do something that mattered. So while finance could make me a lot of money, I eliminated it because I just knew that my soul personally, nothing against people in finance. Some people love it. It's an important role. But for me, doing that I knew wasn't right for me. So I was going to go the path of medicine. I was going to become a doctor. Now, I find there's 2 different types of people though. I was becoming a doctor not because I ever had a dream of being a doctor. I did not care about being a doctor. I cared about the most effective way to make a lot of money and help people. That was the best I could figure. Some people feel vocationally called to be a nurse or a doctor, an attorney. For me, it was just an answer to a problem. So when I met a guy at 17 or a friend of mine from high school met somebody at a ski place, and this network marketing beginning, it was an atypical business that didn't require a lot of investment, very low success rate, a lot of different headwinds, but I didn't have any other opportunity I'd ever seen where I saw people that had created an amazing life. They were able to live their values, have the freedom, and make for me more than enough money than I ever needed to make because they made post tax when you consider the business. A lot of them made more than doctors. So I decided to go that direction. But that was the impetus for me in finding mentorship, finding a vehicle, finding guidance that really started my journey to go down that path because I knew I didn't want to have a regular life. I didn't really know how. So the first opportunity, albeit imperfect, albeit not being exactly what I wanted to do. I've never been passionate about selling direct sales products. I was never passionate, but the outcome it could give me and the net positive impact met all the criteria I was looking for. So I ended up not going to college. I started that. I figured my friends take at least 5 years to their undergrad. Things went really, really well. I stayed home. I was working full time. I have a brother that's 9 years my senior. I was kind of the father figure in his life who's doing amazing. He's got part ownership of an MCA company. He's doing amazing. Really proud of him. But anyway, that was kind of the impetus of that direction.
Gotcha. So you got in there, you got that mentor when you were young, so to speak.
Yes, which was life changing.
Right.
I think that there's four things, someone's listening, some actionable things. I think there's four things you need to be able to create when we talk from a business outside of identity, the other stuff, which is tougher, but four things you need. You need guidance and mentorship from someone who shares your values and has the success. One of the reasons I succeed in that industry is the people that have been training me. They're some of the top people in the country. Being mentored by someone that for 20 years, with your success in real estate, it's a very different thing. If someone's had tremendous success in real estate, they get mentored by somebody. Doesn't mean you don't have to put in the work, but Tom Brady's your dad. Your path to the NFL is going to be different if you want to put in that work. So having good mentorship is absolutely vital if you're going to have accelerated success and really build what you want, I believe. Second, you need curated systems of education. It used to be there was not access to information. Now it's so loud. It's the Aldous Huxley version where there's so much you don't even know what's true. But you need books to read, podcasts to listen to, things to learn to educate yourself. And it's really, in my opinion, in this economy, in this time frame that we're uniquely living, is the curation of it. Because you can't read every book that comes out, you can't read every PDF, you can't do every course. So what is it you're going to do? Third, you need a community of people that are going to also support your goals and dreams, have that ambition, have those standards, because it's tough enough to get yourself to do it. It's much tougher to do it when you're trying to not smoke pot and drink and hang out and play video games and everyone else is doing that. It makes it triple, quadruply difficult. You need people around you that support that direction and a good, healthy community of people with those beliefs. And then number four, you got to find a vehicle, whatever it may be. It could be network marketing, it could be drop shipping, it could be AI arbitrage, it could be a traditional profession, it could be a blue collar skill that's extremely in demand. Whatever it is, you just got to get really clear on making sure that that vehicle can get you to your intended destination. So if you want a great family and a great marriage, I think you need to think twice about becoming partner of a law firm because it's just very difficult to do that depending on how you view. Doesn't mean being a partner's bad, and doesn't mean being a school teacher's bad. Like I said, it's just getting really clear and honest about what the vehicle you choose to apply this to, what it can provide for you.
No, so true. And one thing I want to ask you, just as an aside, because you brought it up, and that's you said coaching, mentoring, the very first thing you said in the list of four.
Yeah.
But I love that you said someone whose values align with you.
Yeah.
Love that. We live in a world where everyone now thinks with Chat GPT and similar AIs, YouTube University, what do I need a coach for? What do I need a mentor
Hmm.
for? And it's almost like we're training people to not value wisdom,
Hmm. Yeah.
which you can't get from Chat GPT or
No.
YouTube, no matter how good your prompt is. How do you help people realize these tools are great? There is not, I mean, AI is fantastic. Well, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're like, that's blatantly wrong.
Yeah. Sure.
But generally speaking, it's a very good tool, right? And it is very helpful in many scenarios. YouTube, of course, we all know has great value in many ways, but it doesn't replace
No.
that guide, not even close. How do you help people with the I don't need this mentality get past that?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times people confuse something that can be an accelerator It can augment something with replacing it. So to act as if AI will not accelerate and augment your reach and the things you can do, that'd be foolish. But it doesn't replace interpersonal connection. There's no way that you can replace that. So when we look at coaching, AI and courses and tools, they can tell you what to do. They can tell you how to do it, but they certainly can't make sure that it's like why you're doing it and is it the best thing to do. And they certainly can't choose which thing and which direction you're going to go based on you. I think a lot of people also they fail to recognize the value of having someone that knows you and that cares about you if it's done properly, and just encouragement, just solidifying that what you're thinking and the direction you're going is good for you based on what you've said. There, you can't replace that with an AI bot. We use AI to extend my reach for data. I have different AI that can help to answer questions that are trained or can help to analyze different sales elements. And that's a great use because it takes time off of me and it gives them 95, 98% accurate data for the same thing that would be extremely costly in time to teach. But it doesn't change the fact of someone saying that they're proud of you and helping you stay accountable. The other element of coaching people fail to recognize is knowing what to do isn't doing it. And very often having somebody, having a deadline, having coursework, having someone you got to sit across from that's going to say, hey, did you do the shit you said you're going to do? That is as important as the actual data. So some people, they are 100% and they're blessed with 100% self-motivated. They're fast learners. They could do it. You can get a long way, but that isn't most people. And that comes back to knowing yourself. I had a trainer, I got a personal trainer. I started working out. I think it was last year, maybe the year before. And after a month, I'm like, okay, I'm a pretty smart guy. I got this. Grow rep every time. I got it. I don't need to pay you anymore. And then I stopped going. And the reality became that I wasn't even paying the guy for data. And we could say, well, I could say to myself, well, I should be able to get myself there. Yeah, but I'm not. So unless I pay somebody to have a standing appointment, I'm not getting myself to be accountable. So I had to understand that I'm not paying you for data anymore, but I am paying you to help me keep myself accountable to doing the thing that I said I was going to do. And the stakes in coaching, whether it's business and life, are way higher than just doing a workout. Very often, this is your personal financial health longitudinally. This is the relationships. This is you staying on track with the things you committed to when the pressures of life make you want to compromise your personal integrity. It's when to change directions and when to stick things out. ChatGPT can't provide that kind of things because they're not going to have the background. We can use it for notes. We can use it for organizing everything to search it. We can use it to analyze patterns and to extend our capabilities, but it doesn't replace somebody doing it with you, in my opinion.
Love it. So speaking of someone doing it with you, you got into this path of network marketing, you had the mentor, you got involved with Amway, and then you became super successful with it, speaking internationally, making millions, helping others make millions. How did all that evolve? And
Yeah, sure. Well, let me make sure I don't get sued first. So most people in Amway fail to succeed. 99% of people never make any money in Amway. Through the course of my career, yes, I've made that much and I've helped people make that much, but that is very atypical results. And most people don't do that. I am in the
right.
0.04% of people that perform in Amway. So I do not want to pretend like my results will equal your results. Just as a note. But what that came from is the thing that most people don't want to do, right? So you can have great mentorship and coaching, like we said, but that's only a small percentage of it. It's a very, very important percentage, and I'm not looking to discount it, but it doesn't take away the 95% of the work you have to do. And that's one of the reasons people become disillusioned by books and education programs and coaching in general is no one can do the work for you. So I became successful in Amway for really three main reasons, I would say. First off, is I had amazing coaches, but the next two are the harder ones. The second one is I worked really hard at it for a long time, and I was really bad at it. I've been doing that for 2 decades. I still do, and I still love it. It's a passion. We make a lot of money from it, but I did do it because a lot of people helped me when they didn't have to. And in my opinion, there's not a lot of bridges that you can take when you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of experience, you don't have a lot of coaching to be able to start to build something that can become something that you own, that can be long term, that you have control over. I find network marketing to be, for the right person at the right time, one of the best bridges to develop the mentality and the success to then have other options or double back down on network marketing. But I worked really hard at it, is the first thing. And I did an amount of work that most people don't do. And that's the biggest part. And then the third is I treated the education like I would have treated medical school. A lot of people they're really casual about it. I love TV. I love cinema. I love stories. But there was like 10, 11, maybe 12 years of my life, I didn't watch a single thing. All I did was read on my spare time. And I read about a book a week for 10, 12 years, give or take, if you average it out. And I was probably reading 3 books some weeks and thinking about it for a week or two. But if you average it, I've read thousands of books. I've studied and I invested 6 figures in personal development, both in and outside of Amway Core. And I've just worked really hard to develop my mindset, my mentality, and learn the best that I can while doing the actual effort of work, which network marketing is selling products and building a team and equipping and training them, which is the same as any company. It's just laid out a little bit different. I think that it's more equitable share. A lot of times people, they hate network marketing, which, by the way, they do 200 billion, 250 billion a year direct sales annually. They say it doesn't work is silly. Most people fail at it, but very often people disregard the amount of work that it takes, or they're in a company that someone makes money on signing them up, which changes the dynamic of things. They'll often say that's a business. You got to get people who get people. That's every business. Every business needs to get customers and they need to get people to work with or for them. Network marketing is just more of a partnership. So, but that's the success I think comes from those things, having someone that was willing to teach me and care about me and listening to them, and then applying that hard work over years and years and years of effort, while also having a regiment of study for myself that most people don't commit to. So I have no college education, but I'd put my education and my knowledge up against a lot of people with a PhD, maybe not as specialized, but I've done that work to educate myself.
Still got to put in the work.
Can't get away from it.
Just some gems here, some gems. Let me ask you, you effectively reshaped your life in real time with a mentor to create tremendous success through the network marketing space, now the coaching space. The world is moving at a crazy fast pace, as we know. Now with AI, it just seems like
Yeah.
it's like every week we're in a new place. It almost seems like.
Yeah.
Is there any advice, now you spend a lot of time coaching, is there any advice that you hear shared often today that was great 10 years ago, but today is totally outdated?
That's a good question. No one's asked me that one, Frank.
Oh,
Let me think about that. I think that with the exponential growth of these tools, I think that probably the biggest limit is what somebody can accomplish and the time frame that they can accomplish it in. But we can't unpeg ourselves from our self-image and what we think that we can do. So all the technological advances and all the financial opportunities that come, if you think you're worth X amount, you almost always will self-sabotage back down to whatever amount you think you're worth. They wrote this is a book from 70 years ago. They ran an ad for the same Magic of Thinking Big. This has been going on forever. They ran an ad for like a salary for 20 grand and they put the same description for 100 grand. And there was 10 times more applicants for the same job description at 5 times less pay, because people will typically self-select out of opportunities. So as fast and as vast as this growth with AI and DeFi and opportunities and things that can happen, I think it does really come down to what you see yourself worth is a big thing. And I don't see that talked about nearly as often as these leaves on the tree and disregarding the roots. Now, talking to someone that's like, because there's 2 different types of people. People thrive in change or they don't like change. Strategically, first off, it comes back to knowing yourself. If you thrive in change, you being a first mover on this stuff has unbelievable opportunities. The faster things change and the more you're willing to learn and be on top of it, especially if that's your aptitude and propensity, the more you can serve and you can help other people teach those different things, which creates an entire different industry of itself in the information business. On the other end, if you're more adverse to change, you certainly can double down on tried and true things that never change, which is human psychology and how people are and who people are. That never changes, you know? So I think it's important you don't try to be someone you're not either, you know? So you don't have to drown and be like unbelievably stressed and have this unbelievable existential dread about how fast things are moving. Become a master of the things that never change. And now you've hedged your bet, you're in your strength zone. You're good at change, great. Learn all the stuff that's changing. I thrive in that area. I like new stuff, and you add value and you take advantage of that. But either way, I don't think one type of person wins or loses. I think losing and winning are very reductive. You know, we need to decide who we are, what are we good at, where do we want to go? Because my life might be great for some people that are listening, but a lot of people would hate my life. It doesn't make either of us wrong. It's just getting clear on what it is that you want.
Well, let's talk about what you want for a moment, because you alluded to it a moment
For me,
ago. Well, just in general. Well, I mean, we could do you too, sure, but but a
but let's do
question.
I was going to say, let's talk general about them. No one gives a shit about Anthony's stuff. I'm here to help them.
Well, this is a great point then. You were talking about people, the job thing you talked about was really cool. It's like if you got two jobs, the job that pays less will get a lot more interest because people
Yeah,
are
often.
dialing down their expectations. You mentioned Tony Robbins, and I've heard Tony Robbins say most people will overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade, or some
Yes.
variation of that. I think that's how he says it.
Yeah.
The challenge is, how do you, I guess, dial up the temperature? How do you know how far you can dial up the temperature? Because you don't want to dumb yourself down, but at the
Right.
same time, you don't want to think you're going to be a billionaire in 30 days. So
Right.
how does
Yeah.
someone decipher that? All right, this is really where I think I can max out, and it actually is achievable.
Yeah. Okay. So the way I teach this is first off, I think that we need to have two types of goals. We have aspirational goals that are meant to inspire. And that takes into account that anything can happen, right? That we could become a billionaire in 30 days, but it's not a strategic goal. A strategic goal is grounded in expectations, data, and numbers. And I think that when we look at that, I think having an aspiration to do something, big goals and dreams, I think that's really important to make sure that we know the direction we're going and to not shortchange ourselves. But we also have a strategic goal based on what I have done, what I've been doing, what is appropriate based in this market, in this time frame, my efforts put in, that's more strategic. So I don't think that we take these big dreams and squish them, but I also don't think we can let these big dreams be an expectation at the same time. And that comes down to the way that we manage it. And the reason most people fail in recognizing what they can do in a decade and they overestimate what they can do in a year is we need to ground our wins, our success, and our progress in our efforts first, not in the results that they yield. Because we can get ourselves to the gym 6 days a week, but we can't demand our physiology respond the way that we hoped it would. So when we tie our goals to outcomes, very often we're disillusioned and frustrated. When we tie both our self-image and our actions or our goals to our actions, the things that lead, those lead measures, when you talk about 4DX and lag measures and lead measures and getting really focused in a company on what we want to do, then we can always know that we're on the right track. We need numbers, we need goals, we need expectations, we need results. But when we tie our identity to our actions and our goals to our actions, and then we measure the results a little bit less emotionally, which true and false, what needs to change, we look at it as data. The challenge is that so many people struggle with failure because they take it personal. They make it, I'm a failure, rather than this initiative failed. Small business owners, they start thinking the business is them rather than identity. Their identity, rather than not be their identity, it be a separate entity. And as long as you get this transference between your goals, your business, your vocation, I mean, that's why a lot of people die when they retire, when they climb a high corporate ladder. If your identity has become being a senior manager and you're not a senior manager, who am I? I have no purpose. So it's important that we get clear that our identity and our self-esteem never comes from output and results. Because if you get the results and it's your output, you're an arrogant jerk. You're an arrogant asshole. If you don't get them, you're a piece of shit and you hate yourself. We can't do it like that. It's not sustainable.
Let me ask you one more question.
You got good questions, Frank. No wonder you got 175 podcasts.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Well, let me ask you one more. Hopefully, I can maintain the standard. As entrepreneurs, everyone gets stuck.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. You're going to get stuck, probably multiple times.
Yep.
As you're, maybe it's stuck going up, maybe it's stuck in just plateauing, whatever it is, you're going to get stuck. What's a time in your life where you got stuck that it seemed like the barrier was impenetrable?
Yeah.
And how did you get past it in a way? And if you could share your answer in a way that anybody listening could relate and go, okay, I can do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Let me use the network marketing journey. And I want to make sure I explain this thoroughly because there are times when you stay at something, there's times you quit, and that's unique to the person and the situation. A lot of times people always value staying at something or they always value quitting and shifting. I don't think either of those are properly nuanced enough to be valid. But there were many times I was working my network marketing business. I was doing everything that was said. The systems were decayed or they were antiquated. I wasn't getting done what needed to get done. My strengths and propensities weren't matching what was necessary. So there were a lot of times that I was like, should I quit this? And should I not do this? And every entrepreneur, every relationship is going to have that to a degree. To expect that to not happen is setting yourself up for failure. You're never married to somebody for 50 years. You're like, this was the best choice every day of your life. That's not going to happen. You're not succeeding at something and saying every day was great and I made the right choice. That's just not realistic. What I did was I would always run through myself the same question. I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay. What's something else I can do that would provide the type of outcome I'm looking for? Because quitting and going to nothing is not going to be a good strategic move. So I hate doing this. I'm mad. I'm upset. My success hasn't gone where I wanted to. I've done everything I can. I feel like I'm like, okay, well, what's the alternative? And through all these seasons for me, I didn't have an alternative. I couldn't find an alternative. So I stuck and kept going. I said, until I can find a better way that'll provide the life that I want, I'm not going to quit because of my feelings and because this is hard. If I have a better strategic direction, then I can think about it and we can consider it. Now, in looking back, I feel confident of two things because I've thought about this a lot. Number one, which is a hot take, I feel very confident if I had not done network marketing, or at least the way I was doing it earlier, I'd be worth more money. The cycle of network marketing and the limitations, I would have thrived more financially in something that was purely entrepreneurial. So very often that's where people, they look at something like, oh, I did all this time and I could have done more. It's not the whole story. On the other end of the spectrum, I wouldn't become the person I am. I wouldn't have had the character that I have. I wouldn't have had the skills. I wouldn't have had the pride in seeing something through. That very often my particular strengths and talents were indexed at zero in what I was doing. I had all these strengths and talents that were meaningless in the game that I chose to play, which developed a tremendous amount of character. And I wouldn't have the marriage I have because I wouldn't have that character. Probably wouldn't be with my wife. So when we look at directions and things, I think it's really important that we're going to go through hard times. That is inevitable. You're not going to be in a Nicholas Sparks novel like The Notebook. People are like, oh, I expect my marriage to look like that. Nicholas Sparks is also divorced. I don't know him, but it's fiction is the key to keep in mind. That's not how relationships look. But we need to be really clear to know that there are going to be really hard times. When you stay, when you quit, I think everything's got pros and cons. And as long as we look at life as that there's this singular right choice, you are always going to be unhappy. You are always going to be filled with existential dread. I think any option you choose becomes the right choice because you chose it. You don't find a soulmate and there's one person, 7 billion people. You choose to be committed in a marriage, and that person becomes your soulmate because that's the choice that you made. So I don't think it's, oh man, what do I do? What's the right choice? It's you make your choice to the best of your ability, and that you change it later, but the choice was the right choice at that moment because that's the choice that you made. I find it to be a much healthier way to look at things.
It's a good word. It's a good word. Well, Anthony, I want to thank you for coming on. This is some good hard hitting stuff today. Some good things to think
Thank you.
about. I got the show episode. I wrote it down about the rose. I'm like, that's the title right there.
I love
So
it. I love it.
that's good. Good. So I appreciate it. We might have to have a round two. I didn't even hardly get to most of my questions, so that's all right though.
I'd love to. You're a great podcast host. You have tremendously insightful questions, and I would love to do that again.
All right. Well, let's talk about that. But in the meantime, to all our listeners, you'll have links where you can reach out to Anthony below. He's written a book. We didn't even get to talk about that, but he's written a book. He's got a number of sites and, of course, about his coaching. If you'd be interested in working with Anthony, certainly reach out to him
Yeah.
and be happy to have a conversation with him or his team. So, Anthony, I want to thank you again for coming on today. It was a great show. I'm glad you found me. That was great. And can you leave us with a final
I'm
word?
glad I did too. Yeah, the final word I'll leave is a lot of people listen to this podcast. And a lot of people in their own car, while they're working out, you listen to Frank, you listen to all the work he does to find guests and to ask insightful questions and do all the preparation. And a lot of times people listening to podcasts fail to recognize that Frank does not see or hear 99% of that positive feedback. So my word is if you've listened to any episode, this included, reach out to Frank. Thank him for the work he's doing. Let him know how it's inspired and helped you in your life. Because a lot of times people don't realize how far that can take because the amount of time and money and effort that Frank puts in this is a labor of love. The best thing that he can get is just knowing 5 or 10 people whose lives were inspired, directions changed, and impact that he made. And that helps you keep going for 6 or 12 more months in podcasts.
Well, thank you for the kind word. I appreciate that. Love it. Love it.
For
Awesome.
sure.
Well, Anthony, we'll be in touch. I look forward to continuing the conversation.